Commander Vex'theta slammed his primary appendage against the control console, his bioluminescent patches flickering with frustration. How, in the name of the eternal nebula, did those primitive mammals manage to breach our defensive grid? He snarled, his voice carrying that distinctive metallic rasp all Zephyrians possessed when agitated. The bridge of the dreadnought Infinite Dominion buzzed with nervous energy. Officers from 12 different species scurried between stations, their various forms of panic creating quite the interstellar comedy show. Well, it would have been funny if they weren't currently being hunted by what they'd previously considered nothing more than evolved primates with delusions of grandeur. Sir, Lieutenant Crickstall's voice quivered like jelly in a sonic storm, the human vessels are maintaining pursuit. They're actually gaining on us. Vex'theta's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. 3 months ago, the Galactic Council had been laughing at Earth's pathetic attempts to join their ranks. Cute little bipeds, they'd called them. Adorable in their simplicity. Now those same council members were either dead, captured, or running for their lives across 17 star systems. Tactical analysis, Vex'theta demanded, his patience wearing thinner than atmosphere on a dying moon. The ship's AI, Omnisage Theta 9, materialized as a shimmering hologram. Its voice carried that insufferable tone of artificial intelligence trying to sound reassuring while delivering terrible news. Commander, human tactical doctrine appears to violate approximately 73% of established military theory. Their approach to warfare is, and I quote from our xenobiology database, completely insane. Elaborate. Well, sir, they've weaponized their own cargo vessels. Who does that? They're using civilian transports as ramming ships, packed with explosive materials. Yesterday, they converted a luxury cruise liner into a kinetic bombardment platform. A cruise liner, Commander. With a swimming pool. Sub-Commander Rilnox, whose species had evolved from pack hunters on Zirian Prime, let out a nervous chittering sound. Sir, perhaps we should consider negotiating. The humans seemed reasonable enough during first contact. Surely they'd be open to discussion. Vex'theta's laugh echoed through the bridge like grinding metal. Reasonable? Rilnox, these creatures declared war on us because we wouldn't let them join our trade federation. When we explained that their technology was approximately 700 years behind standard requirements, they said, challenge accepted. The ship suddenly lurched to port, throwing half the bridge crew against bulkheads. Emergency klaxons began their ear-splitting symphony. Report. Vex'theta barked. Human fighters, sir. They're using some kind of modified mining equipment as weapons. The projectiles are chunks of asteroid rock wrapped in nuclear warheads. That's not even possible. Apparently, sir, no one informed the humans of this impossibility. Through the main viewport, Vex'theta watched in horrified fascination as a formation of human ships approached. They weren't sleek or elegant like proper warships should be. They looked like someone had taken industrial equipment, bolted guns to it, and decided to paint motivational messages on the hull. The lead vessel bore the words, Murphy's Law, in garish yellow letters. Incoming transmission from the human fleet, Communications Officer Teoris announced, her voice barely above a whisper. On screen. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a human female with short-cropped auburn hair and eyes that seemed to hold equal parts mirth and menace. Her uniform was practical rather than ceremonial, and she wore what appeared to be a necklace made from alien technology components. Good morning, Commander Vex'theta, she said with a smile that made his species equivalent of blood run cold. I'm Captain Maria Santos of the Terran Defense Force. Beautiful day for a space battle, don't you think? Captain Santos, Vex'theta managed, trying to maintain some semblance of diplomatic composure, surely we can resolve this misunderstanding through negotiation. Santos tilted her head, that unsettling smile never wavering. Oh, there's no misunderstanding, Commander. You guys told us we weren't advanced enough to play with the big kids. We took that personally. Your species lacks the necessary technological sophistication for galactic membership. This is simply fact, not insult. Technological sophistication, Santos repeated, as if tasting the words. That's interesting. Tell me, Commander, how many of your sophisticated worlds have we liberated so far? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. 17 worlds. 17 supposedly impregnable fortress worlds had fallen to human ingenuity in less than 3 standard months. You see, Santos continued, we may not have your fancy energy shields or quantum computers, but we've got something you apparently lack. And what might that be? Imagination. The transmission cut out just as proximity alarms began screaming. 3 human ships had somehow materialized within the Infinite Dominion's defensive perimeter. How did they get through our shields? Vex'theta demanded. Sir, the tactical officer's voice cracked with disbelief, they didn't go through the shields. They went under them. Literally. They used the gravity well of that nearby asteroid to slingshot beneath our defensive grid. That's impossible. The gravitational stress would tear their ships apart. Yes, sir. The humans appear to have reinforced their hulls with a substance they call duct tape and what their manifest lists as stubbornness. Vex'theta felt his confidence crumbling like a sandcastle in a tidal wave. Return fire. All weapons. The dreadnought's massive energy cannons swiveled toward the human vessels, unleashing enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. The beam struck the human ships dead on, enveloping them in brilliant flashes of destructive energy. When the light faded, all 3 human vessels were still there, apparently unharmed. Sir, Tactical Officer Merkden's voice barely qualified as a whisper, they're not using energy shields. Then how are they surviving our weapons? They appear to have mirrors, sir. Highly polished metallic surfaces that are reflecting our energy beams back at us. Vex'theta's jaw dropped so far it nearly unhinged. They're defending themselves with mirrors? Mirrors and what appears to be spray paint, sir. Lots of spray paint. The human ships suddenly accelerated, moving in patterns that defied every tactical manual ever written. They spun, rolled, and looped through space like drunken acrobats, somehow avoiding the dreadnought's automated defense systems through sheer unpredictability. Sir, Communications Officer Teal'c called out, we're receiving another transmission from Captain Santos. Put her through. Santos reappeared on the screen, now wearing what appeared to be a cooking apron over her uniform. Commander, I hope you don't mind, but we've taken the liberty of boarding your ship. My team should be reaching your engine room right about now. Impossible. Our internal sensors show no breach. Oh. We didn't breach anything. We knocked politely and asked your maintenance staff to let us in. Turns out, if you're friendly enough and bring sandwiches, people are surprisingly cooperative. The lights on the bridge flickered ominously. What are your people doing to my ship? Vex'theta demanded. Well, my chief engineer wanted to see how your quantum drive works. She's particularly interested in what happens when you introduce Earth coffee into the fuel mixture. Coffee? You're sabotaging our engines with a beverage? Sabotage is such an ugly word, Commander. We prefer aggressive technical consultation. The ship shuddered violently, and the main engines fell silent. Sir, engineering reported over the comm, the humans have somehow convinced our engine core to run on a substance called espresso. It's producing 17% more power than before, but it's also making concerning whistling sounds. They improved our engines? Vex'theta's voice climbed several octaves. Santos laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both cheerful and terrifying. Commander, that's what we do. We take things that work and make them work better. Usually by accident, but the results speak for themselves. What do you want from us? Same thing we wanted from the beginning. Recognition. Respect. And maybe an apology for calling us adorably primitive during the first contact ceremony. Vex'theta felt the weight of inevitability settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. The humans hadn't just beaten them militarily, they'd made it look easy and fun. Somehow, these creatures had turned interstellar warfare into what appeared to be an elaborate practical joke. "If we agree to support your membership in the Galactic Council," he said slowly, "will you cease hostilities?" "Oh, Commander," Santos replied, her grin widening impossibly, "we're just getting started." The Infinite Dominions bridge had transformed into something resembling a cosmic circus. Warning lights blinked in 17 different colors, creating a light show that would have been impressive if it weren't announcing imminent catastrophe. Commander Vex'theta watched in mounting horror as his supposedly impregnable dreadnought fell apart around him, one impossible human innovation at a time. "Sir," Lieutenant Crickstall's voice had reached frequencies typically reserved for mating calls, "the humans have somehow taught our food replicators to make something called pizza. The entire crew on Deck 7 has abandoned their posts to try it." "They're bribing my crew with food?" "It appears so, sir. Also, they've introduced a game called poker to the recreation deck. Half our tactical staff is currently learning to bluff." Vex'theta's primary brain began developing what humans might recognize as a migraine. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Thekmor at Central Command. Maybe he can explain how an entire galactic armada is being defeated by creatures who consider duct tape a legitimate engineering solution." The communication channel crackled to life, revealing Admiral Thekmor's ancient visage. The old Zentorian looked like he'd aged several decades in the past few hours, his usually pristine uniform wrinkled and stained with what appeared to be human coffee. "Vex'theta," the Admiral's voice carried the weight of cosmic resignation, "please tell me you have good news." "I wish I could, sir. The humans have turned my ship into some kind of floating entertainment complex. They're currently teaching my security chief how to make something called grilled cheese sandwiches." "At least your crew is still alive," Thekmor replied with bitter irony. "The humans captured the Nexus station by challenging our commander to something called a dance-off. Commander Yulkar is apparently quite skilled at what they term the robot." "Sir, with respect, how are we losing to these people?" Admiral Thekmor's expression grew even more haggard. "Because, Commander, we've been fighting the wrong war. We prepared for energy weapons, quantum tactics, and sophisticated strategy. The humans showed up with creativity, friendship, and an alarming willingness to try things that should absolutely not work." A new voice interrupted their conversation. "Excuse me, gentlemen, but I couldn't help overhearing." Both officers turned to see Captain Santos materialize on the bridge through what appeared to be a ventilation shaft. She dropped down with practiced ease, brushing dust off her uniform and straightening her improvised alien tech necklace. "How did you get onto my bridge?" Vex'theta demanded. "Your ventilation system is surprisingly spacious," Santos replied cheerfully. "Also, your maintenance crew gave me a tour. Lovely people, by the way. Very helpful once you explain that you're not actually trying to conquer anyone." "You're not conquering us?" Santos looked genuinely puzzled. "Commander, we're librarians." The statement hung in the air like a gravitational anomaly. "I beg your pardon?" "Well, not literally. But think about it. You have all this amazing technology, incredible scientific knowledge, and fascinating cultural traditions. We want to learn from you, share with you, maybe teach you a few things in return. The whole invasion thing is just our way of getting your attention." Admiral Thekmor's image flickered with static. "You're telling me that this entire military campaign is an elaborate introduction?" "Pretty much," Santos nodded. "Though I'll admit, it got a bit out of hand when you kept shooting at us. We're not really good at backing down from challenges. But you've destroyed 17 fortress worlds." "Destroyed is such a harsh word. We prefer, creatively renovated. Have you seen what we did with the defense platforms around Kepler 442b? We turned them into the galaxy's largest hydroponics facility. The local population is thrilled." Vex'theta felt his worldview crumbling like a cookie in a supernova. You mean to tell me that all of this military genius, all of these impossible tactics, were just you trying to make friends? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds kind of silly, Santos admitted. But yes, essentially. We figured if we could prove we were worth talking to, maybe you'd reconsider that whole, not advanced enough, decision. By defeating our entire military? By showing you what we're capable of when we put our minds to it. Humans are really good at problem solving, especially when people tell us something is impossible. Lieutenant Crickstal suddenly perked up from his station. Sir, I'm receiving reports from across the fleet. The humans aren't taking prisoners or demanding surrender. They're hosting cultural exchange programs. Cultural exchange? Yes, sir. The crew of the Stellar Magnificence is currently learning to make human music using our quantum harmonizers. The Void Breakers engineering team is teaching humans about antimatter containment, while the humans are teaching them about something called barbecue. Santos beamed with pride. See? We're natural diplomats. We just have an unconventional approach to first contact. Admiral Thekmore's image stabilized as he leaned forward. Captain Santos, are you saying that if we agree to reconsider Earth's membership application, this entire conflict will end? Oh, Admiral, the conflict ended the moment you started talking to us as equals instead of dismissing us as primitives. Everything else is just details. Vex'theta looked around his bridge. His crew was no longer running in panic. Instead, they were clustered around human personnel, engaged in animated conversations about everything from quantum mechanics to cooking techniques. His weapons officer was actually laughing at something a human engineer had said. I don't understand, he admitted. Why go to all this trouble? Why not simply demonstrate your capabilities through peaceful means? Santos shrugged. We tried that first. Remember? We sent diplomatic envoys, shared our cultural achievements, even offered to help with some of your scientific projects. You patted us on the head and told us to come back in a few centuries when we'd grown up. So you decided to prove us wrong by conquering half the galaxy? We decided to prove you wrong by showing you what humanity really means. We're not just another species looking for membership benefits. We're partners, collaborators, friends who happen to be really, really good at improvising solutions to impossible problems. The ship's PA system crackled to life with a familiar artificial voice. Attention all personnel. The human modification to our engines has increased efficiency by 27%. Also, the coffee they provided has improved crew morale by an unprecedented degree. I am updating my databases to include aggressive friendship as a legitimate diplomatic strategy. Santos grinned. Even your AI gets it. Admiral Thekmore's expression had transformed from resignation to something approaching wonder. Captain Santos, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally invite humanity to join as full members. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that far exceed our initial assessments. With full voting rights and access to all scientific databases? Absolutely. And you'll stop calling us, adorably primitive? I suspect, Admiral Thekmore said with what might have been the first genuine smile Vex'theta had seen from him in decades, that particular phrase will be retired permanently. Santos extended her hand toward Vex'theta. Commander, what do you say? Friends? Vex'theta stared at the offered appendage, then at the chaos his bridge had become, then at his crew who looked happier than they had in months. Finally, he reached out and grasped the human's hand. Friends, he agreed. Though I reserve the right to be completely terrified of your species' capacity for creative problem solving. Santos laughed, that sound that had once seemed menacing now revealing itself as purely joyful. Commander, you haven't seen anything yet. Wait until you meet our children. They're the ones who really know how to think outside the box. As alerts continued to sound throughout the ship, now announcing successful cultural exchanges rather than military defeats, Vex'theta realized that humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy after all. They'd done something far more remarkable. They'd made it a more interesting place to live. "Captain Santos," he said, "I believe this is the beginning of a very unusual friendship." "The best kind," she replied. "Trust me, Commander. You're going to love what comes next." And despite everything, Vex'theta found himself actually looking forward to finding out what that might be.